been before, welcome back. And for those who are first time to this channel, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Zena and I'm the face behind from the SheShed France. So a bit about my background. I'm now living in rural Brittany where I blog, vlog and I make a variety of items to sell, as well as running a gîte de table. So my channel is about the things that I do, but it's also underpinned with an approach which is supported by mindfulness and flourishing. And today I'm going to be talking a bit about mindfulness, flourishing and creativity. Mindfulness is not a new concept. It's something that has been thought of for thousands of years. Ancient Greek philosophers were talking about the way in which we lived our lives, and we can actually relate that to mindfulness. I think, though, in recent years we've noticed a real increase in people starting to think about mindfulness. And certainly the pandemic, the COVID pandemic that we have been through for the last 2 and a bit years now, has had a huge impact on people's mental health. The lockdowns meant that many people spent months in isolation. They didn't get to do things that they would normally have done. They didn't get to see the people that they would normally have seen. We know that we've had children going through GCSEs and A-levels without actually going into schools. We've had students going through university degrees without actually setting foot inside a university building. So what has happened, it has been that there has been a huge shift in our society that has meant that we have actually had to start thinking about people's mental health. And that, of course, is an aspect of mindfulness. And so I'm going to talk a bit more about that today. As I've said, mindfulness is not a new concept. It's been thought of for thousands of years. Flourishing is something that is newer. Martin Seligman described it during the 20th century, and he developed it further during his research. And a few years ago, some colleagues and I were asked to write a book on policy, which we thought was incredibly dull. But it was something that we'd been asked to do by a fairly major educational publisher, so it was something that seemed like a good idea at the time. So what we decided to do was take a different approach, and actually we drew on the work of Martin Seligman. And in fact we then conducted some research of our own, using his concepts to actually look at the way in which young children could be supported to learn and develop. Seligman has an acronym which underpins flourishing. So he talks about PERMA, and that's positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning and accomplishment. So there's 5 strands to flourishing, and in fact in our lives we actually hope that we're engaging with all of those most of the time. So personal enjoyment actually looks right back to Aristotle, and even Seligman talks a bit about the work of Aristotle. And so Aristotle, my favourite dead Greek philosopher, actually talks about the good life and living a good life. And so if you are constantly doing a job that you really don't enjoy, that you don't get any personal satisfaction from, you aren't going to be living the good life. So we need to look for ways in which we can personally enjoy what we're up to. Engagement is another strand of flourishing, and it can have different names in different types of mindfulness. So engagement is when you are absolutely in the moment, that what you are doing takes away everything around you. You almost become unaware of the world around you when you are fully engaged. In fact, other philosophies have referred to this as a moment of ma, or a moment of flow. So you really don't become aware of what is happening around you, and that is really useful when you actually want to become mindful, is to actually be able to shut out the world. Relationships are really important, but obviously they need to be positive relationships. And those don't need to be simply relationships with a partner. They are friendships, they're work relationships, there's all sorts of relationships in our lives. And so we need to ensure that we make those as positive as possible. And if they aren't positive, then perhaps they aren't a relationship that we want to keep in our lives. Meaning is really important within flourishing, and likewise in mindfulness. If we are going to have a life in which we feel good, then we need to have meaning to our life. We need to feel positive about what it is that we're doing. We need to feel that what's happening is meaningful. And finally, accomplishment. Now, accomplishment can come in a variety of different forms. Some days, if you're feeling really miserable, getting out of bed, getting a shower and getting dressed is an accomplishment. For other people, it's actually getting a qualification, it's getting a pay rise, it's getting a promotion. But actually, accomplishment should be about yourself. So it's not necessarily something that can be controlled by somebody else. So when you are doing something creative, you actually finishing something is an accomplishment. Actually finding something that you want to make, finding the right materials with which to make it, and actually having something at the end of the day, that is an accomplishment. So within flourishing, there are those 5 strands, and I find them really useful because I think they help me think about how I have a positive life and how I provide a positive impact on those around me. Those are things that I am trying to think about a lot of the time. So in my previous life, I was a lecturer in higher education, and my area of focus was early childhood. And so I said just now that the initial reason that we looked at flourishing was because we'd been asked to write a book on policy, but we became interested in how flourishing could be applied in early childhood education and care, and particularly within education, about how children could be supported to flourish. And so we looked very closely at that and did some research around that. I also did some research with practitioners, because what became something that I became really aware of was the fact that if we wanted young children to flourish, then we needed those that were working with them to flourish too. So I actually spent some time working with practitioners to find out whether they felt that they were flourishing. A lot of them didn't, and how they could be supported to flourish. So what changes could be made within the workplace that would make them feel valued and make them feel as though they were flourishing. And what became really interesting was that, as in many things, it wasn't about money. It was about how they were treated, how they were respected, and how they felt about themselves. And so I think flourishing actually gives those opportunities that we might not otherwise have. And so I really find it's really important to think about that, and think about it in my own life and in the lives of others, and to think about how I can go about supporting people to flourish. And that might be by teaching to crochet a granny square. It might be by helping you learn to make chutney, which is going to be another one of my videos. But it might be just about getting you to think about taking time for yourself, finding out what you enjoy in life, finding out how you can take that time, reflect, be quiet, and listen to what makes you flourish. Creativity is the third strand of today's chat, and it's something that is often associated with the arts and with crafts, and certainly for me that's often the case. However, actually creativity is much broader than that, and we need to really recognise that. No piece of research, no discovery, no new idea comes without creativity. And alongside that, there has to be a willingness to have a go, to take a chance, to look at something from a new perspective. Because without the ability to do those things, you can't be creative. You can't actually develop something new if you already know the solution. So creativity is about finding different solutions, about finding different approaches, and actually it is always going to be about taking a chance. I mean, I'm fiddling with this at the moment, and actually if you think that I was a pattern tester for this, the woman who created it, she was being creative, she was taking a chance, she had her idea, she wrote it down, and she then got others to try it, to give it a go. And that is something I think is really important aspect of creativity. I think if you're going to be creative, you need to be willing to make mistakes. So I see a lot of videos where people will say, oh well, you know, I'm really worried I'm going to get it wrong. And I don't think it's about getting it wrong or getting it right. It's about having a go, finding out what you like, what you don't like, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And also what makes you flourish, what makes you feel good. For me, it is my crochet. So at the moment, I said in another video that I am doing a shawl using 3 different types of yarn. And so here I am. I'm now on number 3, which I'm making with cotton yarn. So in another video, I'm going to talk a bit about that. But it could have gone wrong. It could have gone horribly wrong. Actually, I think they look quite good. I'm quite pleased with how things are turning out. So that was a creative approach that I took. For me, creativity is my knitting, my crochet, my cooking. But for you, it might be something completely different. And I'm hoping that by thinking about what makes you feel good, what makes you have positive emotions, what makes you feel engaged, then you can start to think about how you flourish and how you can make use of creativity to support your flourishing. So today has been a bit of a talking head, and for that I apologise, but at the same time I wanted to give you some background on how I'm pulling my life together and how I see flourishing and creativity as part of my life together, and how I see that as being very important, and I wouldn't want to lose sight of any of them. One of my children watched one of my videos and said it was too much of a talking head. The next one, I promise you, won't be. It will be much more practical. I'm actually going to be making very soon some chutney because I've just been given some windfall apples. So what do you do with apples? You make chutney. And so at this point, all I want to do is say thank you so much for watching today. I hope you've actually enjoyed some of the things that I've had to say. If you've got questions or comments, please do leave them in the box below. I really want to be able to engage with you. Likewise, I really would like it if you would start to follow me. So click the subscribe button, ring the bell, which will remind you when I've actually posted something. But that just leaves me to say thank you for being here today. I hope that you are able to find ways in which you can get your life to flourish, and I hope to see you again very soon in the SheShed.